So I wanted to answer a bit to Walker because he mentioned Portugal. And I wanted to make some interesting contrasts. Well, in a way, I think the reasons why immigrants are coming are similar to almost all Western countries. I'll be coming there. But the way that migrants are accepted and integrated, or the society opens the door for them to come in, it's very different from country to country. And we see huge difference in each countries. And that's why something like what happened in France would be more difficult to happen in Portugal. It happens, and Voz do Povo knows that. It happens sometimes in Portugal, but it's more difficult to happen in Portugal. Why? Because it's the incoming culture, the amphitryon, the guest, not the guest, what do you call it? The amphitryon culture also plays a big role. Is it this culture open to have new cultures around, or the other say around? And this is a process that happened in most of Europe, but didn't happen in Portugal. Portugal is perhaps the oldest state nation in the world. We are Portuguese almost since the 1143 when the country was created. We never had a problem to deal with different cultures. Well, people were coming all the time. We had immigrants in our history. We had always had immigrants coming. But
you invented that.
Yes, but in a way we didn't question the idea that Portugal doesn't exist just in the paper. It existed, that's it. We didn't have to question. But we forget that in Europe we had this age of nations, the creation of nation state. And in many of these countries, especially the ones that made this process later, they do have a problem with immigrants, although they always were immigrants. But we forget that it was just perhaps 70 years ago that they exterminated everybody around. They exterminated in the process of creating a nation state. In Poland, we just have Poles. In Czech Republic, we just have Czechs. In Germany, we just have Germans. This process was not long ago. In Portugal, it started that way. It's the only country in Europe that had these. All other countries had many ethnic groups inside, and they coexisted for a long time. And then they created this idea of nation state, that in a nation you have to have a language, ethnic group, and that makes that country. And this process was very, very bad. In France, we have what some people were calling the civic nationalism. Yeah, the civic nationalism actually is a creation of the French Revolution. And the idea was that everybody, there was many ethnic groups in France. The Languedoc, Occitan, the Normandy, whatever. There were really loads of ethnic groups, but the French Revolution had this problem, and it was like, do we allow people to have their little cultural groups, or everybody has to follow a line? So they created the education system, a very structured education system that everybody had to follow. In order for you to become a French citizen, because you have to participate in the revolution, you have to have all these mechanisms that makes everybody equal. You have to speak the same language. You have to learn it in the same schools. Follow all these. Everybody follows the same process. Doesn't matter. Of course, it's a dream. Is an illusion, but that was their point. And then we have the other countries more to the east of Europe, which had this process much later. And the way they did it was just to exterminate their neighbors. That was the reason they did it. So I think, but this is one of the things I wanted to come, and I will come back. And then we have what Toby was saying, many other people were saying, which is this instability of creating waves of migrants to come to Europe, because we have a problem in Europe, which is demographic, but we have many structural problems everywhere. Somehow our system is falling apart. So we need people for the new modern agriculture, tourism. Local people are not prepared to work for those wages, for those times. So they need immigrants to come and work almost secretly. There are huge waves in Portugal. This has been a scandal. It's like the country didn't know there were so many people being brought to the farms and working in horrible conditions. Our population, but in many countries, like in Greece, this is known, and nobody gets revolted. But it's interesting, and in Portugal,
it's happened right now in UK. Right now in UK,
it's horrible.
Right now,
people like they were slaves. They close them from the eyes of the other, and they work in these in these farms. Then we have the industry. Many heavy industry also can't get people, and they need. That's why North African was needed, because they have a kind of upper education level for everybody. Then we had a problem that someone was talking about: welfare. Many countries don't have enough nurses. They don't, because their population is aging. They need personnel for even medics, doctors. But the big problem now are nurses, are basic healthcare workers. They don't have it, and they are trying to bring as many people as you can. Germany will give you. It's very difficult to get inside of Europe, but if you are open to work in the welfare state, in the health industry, you'll get a visa immediately. It's impressive. Then we also have the tourism. In many countries, tourism has become a big industry, like Portugal, France, the south of, and they need they don't have it. This industry needs a lot of handwork, and they don't need it. So they bring Portugal actually. The Pakistanis will work most. It's small business, but those businesses are orientated for tourism, for instance. That's where Pakistanis mostly work in Portugal. Unfortunately, the Bangladeshis are the ones in the farms. And now, the very interesting way is like we see this process in all countries in Europe. Almost all countries in Europe need handworking. Why do we see some countries being more against than others? And I was saying about it's in the process. It's in their cultural process they did. For instance, Poland is very anti-immigrants, but they need immigrants like crazy. But in a way, that's why they prefer Ukrainians. Because Ukrainians are disguised in the society. They look almost like Poles. So that's also an explanation. Blue eyes. Yes, and they have blue eyes. But the
blonde
Poles,
hair.
Yeah, the Poles were doing this on purpose. The Poles integrated these people